So I'm going to talk about Sails or Sails.js, depending on your reading. And maybe it is the Rails for Node. I don't know. That would be pretty cool. But really, it kind of came about because we were trying to solve with my company some problems that we ran into when we set out to take this Node thing and just really try to build a business on it, doing services work. So I'm Mike, and I started a company a little over a year ago doing full stack JavaScript development, but particularly Node.js development with a lot of real-time apps. And ran into a lot of the same problems that I'm sure the guys from And Yet who are around probably ran into. So the startup's called Balderdash, and we kind of started off with smaller startup companies and helping them build out their Node products. But we've since kind of wandered over into a couple of lucky breaks where people actually trust us to do things for their big companies. So I guess circa 2011, real-time was still pretty shitty to do, and there's all these different ways to get this server-sent event stuff. And so you had Comet, right, which is pejorative, flip around of Ajax, and all that stuff really kind of got solved pretty soon afterwards. And even when I was first looking at this, Socket.io had just, I guess, been around for a little while. And I saw this, and it was like, man, this is awesome. And what you saw here is I was trying to do this little app. This was called Blinktop, and it was basically a way for you to chat with other people watching live TV at the same time as you. And so what I did is I had a PHP server, and there would be like a 5-second poll from the client, and it was really, really bad. Like we could get like 100 users at once, and that was it. So really bad. And so Node.js is awesome, and then the Socket.io thing is awesome too. So when I set out to start this company, I was kind of thinking, well, man, how do we do this for everything? Is this even possible? And the answer is, well, maybe it is. I don't know. And I think now, after what we've gone through, I think the answer is yes. So there's some problems though. So when you're going out to make a Node application, there really aren't any kind of standard structures that you can just rely on, like you could with Rails or Cake PHP. Zins, right? I don't talk about Cake PHP or Grails or any Django, right? And the other thing is, there are some other great frameworks for Node and Meteor and all that stuff, and it's really cool. But the problem is that a lot of the times they get really excited about there being JavaScript, and now you can do like client and server together, and that's really cool. But next time, like what if your client says no, we won't do that, and you're like, but I still want to use Node. So you can't really. It has to be API driven, and you have to build your API first, and it should be a real-time API that supports WebSockets. So and the other thing is there's all these third-party services in the back end, but everyone has that problem. Socket.io messages, and that's what we kind of standardized on, and then Express or Connect middleware, they can't really live together right now. And you have to have these separate code bases that manage those types of requests. And sure, you can like pull out stuff, but it's not the best. So, and then finally, the socket programming thing is kind of hard for people who have never done it, and scalability. So, some of the objections we got was that, well, this Node thing probably isn't secure because JavaScript, and that's in the client, right? And you're like, no, it's not in the client, it's on the server. But no one really got that. But that one you can kind of push on them and trick them, and then eventually they come around. There was no standard ORM. There still isn't really a standard ORM up until now for Node. There's a couple of great attempts, and juggling DB is a really good one. SQLize is a great one for MySQL and SQLite and Postgres. But there really wasn't something where it's like, I have MongoDB, and I also have MySQL, and also maybe Twitter, and I want to treat it like a norm too. And then Node is really low level, and it's kind of awesome, and late at night sometimes I do really crazy things with it because I love it. But it's not always the best way to work with a team of 10 different developers to get a project done in 2 weeks. Too bad, we did it anyways. So this is where Sails came from. And Sails has been around a really long time, comparatively, and we sort of didn't get noticed until actually after I applied for this conference. We were on Hacker News recently, and Since then, we went from having about 30 stars on GitHub to about 2,000 and about 100,000 hits to the website. So what Sails is a MVC structure for Express applications. And it uses the same kind of philosophy that you're familiar with from stuff like Rails and Symfony and all that. But the controllers are just Express middleware, nothing more. Right? You can do all the things you would do in Express, and nothing crazy is coming out to bite you. And we're not going to mess with your context or anything like that. The views are EJS by default because that was the easiest thing for our developers and mainly our customers' developers to get. But you can switch that out just like you can with Express. Probably the biggest piece of new development we did was the ORM. And what this does is basically just takes the simplest possible approach to having a database-agnostic, adapter-driven ORM. And we kind of looked at Mongoose and especially Hibernate, weirdly enough, as well as Active Record. And this is an ongoing process. This is getting better and better, and we're actually in the middle of a rewrite of this right now. But what we did was we took all the best things we could find and we mapped them onto this asynchronous type of data access pattern. And then finally, the last thing is that there's this adapters folder in your application. So in Sails, you're highly encouraged to write your own adapters anytime you need to integrate with a third-party system, right? If you have some crazy, old like Oracle database, you write your own adapter, throw it in there, and then all your code would work, whether it was that crazy thing or something like Mongo. So our answer to authentication is that we just throw more Express middleware at it. So there's this policy chain, and it looks kind of like this. This is the config file. So you can set up in here, the little guy on the left is, let me see if I can do that zoom trick from, oh, I'm not good enough. Oh, maybe. Yeah, so the thing on the left is the name of the entity or the controller, and then the thing on the right is like what policy are we going to apply. So false means no one can ever do this, and true means everyone can do it always. And then you can have like a list of things too, and these are the names of your middleware files. So it's going to check that there's a valid category ID, a valid client ID, and it's going to run this guest authentication policy, which will make sure the session's set up. So that way when you get to your controller, which is really just the last piece of middleware, you know that everything's set up in a way where you can actually do the stuff, and that you're allowed to do it. And you have all your request parameters. Right, and you can do things like storage quotas too. So, and I guess the last piece and the real, maybe the magic of Sails, which isn't really that complicated to do, and I encourage you to play with it if you like Socket.io, is we just took Express semantics and then made like rec.param get the parameter from the Socket.io request. And then like res.send just responds over the socket. So you can take your Express code and then you connect with Socket.io and then you try to do a request to a URL with Socket.io and then it responds just like it does normally. So you can have one code base that powers your real-time app as well as standard HTTP requests. Then we added some other pub/sub convenience stuff too from that same interface. And this is an example of some code. So that on line 176, that's a call to the ORM. This is actually using Elasticsearch in this example. And then we're checking to see is this a socket, and in this case we're actually locking it to only being sockets. But there we're grabbing the parameters from the request, which is actually just a socket message. And then we're sending some stuff back, and there's more to this file. But okay, so that really got us to where we could do some big projects, and we ended up doing this Dropbox-like thing with that. But recently we kind of stumbled into this accidental thing, which turned out to be pretty cool. So we wanted to have like scaffolds, right? But we didn't really want the HTML because we mainly do single-page web apps anyways. So what we did instead is when you create a controller and you don't put anything in it, you serve a blueprint, which is just our way of not saying the word scaffold. And it basically serves this API that you can hit, and it's a RESTful JSON API. And you can do stuff like search and sort and paginate it without writing any code, or like complex queries if you want to do like starts with the letter A and, I don't know, ends with the letter Z. And so you can take that, right? So if you want to have like a type as you go search and you're going to have a list of things in your app, this is all with backbone semantics, right? then you can like add authentication via policies, and you still haven't really written any code other than checking the session. Other cool stuff, we have a command line interface, so you can do the Sails generate stuff. We have a REPL, so you can do, you can try out your little database queries in the console. Custom adapters we've discussed. We just added server-side CoffeeScript support. We also have asset bundling. This is something that's probably going to get pulled out into another module because we really don't have the time to mess with this piece of it. And we want to use Yeoman because that's a really cool thing. So right now there's this assets folder, and you can like throw some less files and CoffeeScript files in there, and it'll sort of like bundle them up in order and then include them at the right spots in your file for you, just as a view partial. And that's what it looks like when you do that. Okay, so let's just try that out really quick. So I'm going to make a new Sails app called NodePDX. Can you guys see that okay? Is that better? Okay. Cool. So it made some stuff for us. Most importantly, we have like a get ignore and a package JSON and all the stuff you need for a normal app. And it made this app.js file, which is really just a call to require Sails and then lift it. But you can also start it from the command line with Sails lift. And this starts the server. And we have ASCII art too. So if you check that out, oh, my email, recruiters. All right. So it doesn't matter if I'm on the internet. That's our little, landing page that I didn't do. And one of the amazing things about the last couple of months is that like all these people from the internet started just doing things, which is amazing. I've never had anything happen like that before. And it's really been a great testament to the power of this community. But okay, so that's all feel-good shit. So let's make a chat thing. So let's generate a thing called message. So I could have said generate model message, and it would have made just a model, and I could have said generate controller message, it would have made just a controller. But if I do generate message, it'll make both. So that's actually all we need. So let's go back over here now. And now if I go to /message, I'm getting a JSON API. So if I can pull up Postman here, which is this cool little REST client. And let's say I want to do a post to message and make sure I have my content type set, because confession, we're using Express 2.x, and the body parser in Express, you actually have to set the content type to JSON in order for it to accept these things as parameters. That's changing. That's one of the things on our roadmap, though. So let's post some stuff, and let's say like payload foo, and maybe wrap that in quotes, or it's not smart enough to figure that out. Okay, so we just created a new thing. So if I go back here, there it is. So now we have this API, and I can say like where payload equals t or payload equals foo, and now I'm doing some querying from the URL. Well, I can also do a post to find all, and you can disable this stuff in production, but by default you get these kind of URLs that you can access this way for convenience. And I can do stuff like where starts with, well, I got to put in what I care about. So where payload starts with F, right? And I don't know if I did that right or not. Yeah, so and payload starts with X, I don't get anything. Right, and I can do contains and ends with, and I can do like SQL-like queries kind of things from here. These are a lot like criteria queries that you might have seen in Grails or something like that. So that's all fine and good, and really where this becomes the most useful is when you're prototyping like an Angular or a Backbone JS app, because you can just like use a server from the beginning. And one of the things that I found out doing our client projects is that if you don't do it that way, you'll forget about little things like validation errors and loading spinners, which are pretty important when you actually want to go live. So the other thing is that these APIs, like Rails scaffolds, you typically just delete them pretty quickly, right? Because you're not going to use that stuff. But these APIs are actually pretty solid, and it might actually be better than something you'd write. And in Node, if you get one error, everything kind of comes tumbling to the ground, and everyone freaks out and then forever restarts. So in a lot of ways, if you can get away with using these, you're probably better off. So you can actually modify the stuff coming in with policies, and there's a lot of really interesting stuff you can do if you kind of chain some policies together and then use the blueprints. But I don't want to go into that because that's something I don't even know really yet what you could do with it. But I am going to switch and show you guys something else. Earlier this week, again, one of those kind of late night projects, I was working on this IRC adapter. And it's kind of weird to think about, like, aren't adapters supposed to be database things? But they don't have to be. So, you can actually hook up whatever you like. Right, so let me show you the code for this first. This is the same app as we had before. There's nothing in the controller. And in our model here, I went and I just said adapter IRC, and then I said, like, who am I? And I'm gonna I forget the pants guy's name. He was awesome, but I'll be the pants guy. And well, the host, this is free Node, so we'll hook onto that, and we'll do Node PDX. So the other cool thing about these blueprints is that they actually handle pub/sub as well. So when I find something, and all this is on the client side is this little JavaScript app here with Socket.io, and so when I find something, I'm subscribing to it. So if I can see it on my page as a client, I care about it, and I probably want to get updates about it. So by default, if you try to connect to these blueprints from a socket, they're going to broadcast stuff back at you, and you can listen to that stuff. So here I'm doing a request to find all there, and that's gonna hook me up to all that stuff in my database, and then this message create thing is creating a new message, and that actually will have the effect of broadcasting to everybody. So, assuming this is actually connected to the IRC server, which it is not. There. So I'm Pants Guy, and I can go in here to what I think is Node PDX. Yeah. Oh, I need to join. I'm not on the internet, so this won't work. But that's the right network, right? Okay. Okay, cool. So I'm going to restart this just because I don't know what... Yeah, you can't get on the internet, so what's happening here is that adapter is actually connecting to the IRC channel on the back end, and then it's listening to the IRC channel for changes and broadcasting those up to the client, or to the Node.js client server, which then broadcasts those back up to this client via WebSockets. Assuming this works. It may very well work. You haven't joined yet. Is someone telling me that in the audience? Or is the IRC channel telling me that? You can see me. Oh, okay, good, good. All right. Did the Sails.js example join? Can you guys see that? Let's see if he joined. I'll kill him one more time and try again. Good call. Okay. All right, so at some point we'll see that, okay, Pants Guy just joined. All right, so now I'm getting chats from IRC. Oh my God, all right. And if I can just get down there, hey, I'm the Pants Guy. So that's cool, that's just kind of a fun little... I thought we were in a new millennium, okay? I thought that was gone. Yeah, so this is cool, and I could go through a little example of how to code up the front end of that, but basically it's just a Socket.io app, and I don't want to cut us short on time. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to approach me afterwards, or if there's any time, fire away. No time. Cool. Thanks, everybody.